Well, I'm here. The weather's been rainy, so I've been inside quite a bit. I've been given some time to read. I would hold up the book that I'm reading, but currently I'm using it as my precarious tripod that you are on right now. It's called Different Seasons by Stephen King. I'm still reading that. As you know, I started my fourth book. The way that I start a brand new story is with no particular beginning. I just start fleshing out events that happen. All the events that begin at the beginning of the book. But it's very hard to pinpoint a single event that really cascades the entire story into a coherent story, because if you notice trends amongst the greatest stories of all time, I'll call them, they're not about hitting a particular set of criteria. They are all simply about people. I'll bring up the Shawshank Redemption, for example. Shawshank Redemption, you got Andy Dufresne, you got Red, you got these two guys that have been in prison, and they talk about prison. Of course, Andy Dufresne is no normal guy. He has a lot of stuff going on for him, and he can describe it coherently. It's about his particular class of human. One that is very intelligent, but the way that he describes everything is a way that is easily digestible. If you're able to describe very complex things in creative and digestible ways to understand, people tend to listen to that because it's new, something they most likely did not know. It's captivating because you're talking about it creatively. And in my opinion, it tells you something about the writer. It tells you something about the person behind the words or the film or the paint. One person put it this way: if you ever really want to get to know somebody, look at what they've created. So recently I wrote a short story. I'm going to tell it to you, paired with illustrations that I made. So it's going to be like a little reading rainbow action. Right? Forewarning, it's kind of a very depressing story, but I think it's a good experiment. Here we go. There were two families, and they were extremely tense with one another. They wanted just one excuse to start killing each other, some sure act of violence. I was with the smaller and weaker family of just a few dozen. We were all dressed in 1910 to medieval outfits because that was the time, and we carried either pistols or swords and got around on horses. Some of the younger parts of both families were friends, but since the families were essentially at war, they couldn't be too close or be seen together. I was part of that younger generation. But I was also being followed around by Death himself. Not because I was going to die, though I may, but because he wanted someone to listen to him. He wanted us to be at war, but he had to wait for us to truly start fighting. In the meantime, myself and a couple of uncles are frantically trying to find a compromise with the other family. Meanwhile, both of our families are still being very tense with one another, but say very little. Everyone seems to know that if the fighting were to begin, the family opposite of my own would definitely kill us. The opposite family is waiting patiently for our compromise to make the peace. And meanwhile, Death is unsettling me to no end as he keeps talking about the two families and how many will die and he needs it and can't wait for it to happen. I continue telling him we'll be able to come to a compromise and he won't be needed and a settlement will be reached. While Death and I were out on a walk, it was more me on a walk while Death followed, I saw the patrols, our family patrols and the opposing family's patrols, both on horses, just a little ways away from the opposing family's camp. We had set strict boundaries, though some of us younger generation decided to meet in secret regardless and speak to one another since we were good friends. While Death and I were walking, he slows. He makes himself visible to everyone and has taken the form of one of the more popular middle-aged men from our opposing family. He's appeared right in front of one of our more stringent patrols, who glides up next to him on a horse, sword drawn. Death gives me one last smug look and is killed right in front of me, quote unquote, by one stroke of the patrol's sword. I had been screaming the whole time, "No, no!" knowing that this would be seen by the other family, and it was. Immediately they rose, saying, "They killed him! They killed him!" and everyone began rushing to arms. For several seconds, I locked eyes with one of my friends from the other side, a girl with short, curly blonde hair. We both mirrored looks of horror and loss as we parted to suit up for the coming battle. I never saw Death's incarnate again, but I saw a great deal of death after that. I cried at the loss of our peace when we began to armor our house, knowing that an onslaught was on its way. We armed and rigged the house with explosives and prepared by building mechanisms that could possibly kill many of the oncoming opposing family. We made a big show of it, so the scouts spying on us reported us stuffing the walls with rockets and being more of a deadly force. I remember trying to find a suit of armor to fight with and being ready to die. And I remember nothing after that. The end. So that story was based off of a dream that I had, which is why it was so hastily written and very choppy and completely unedited. But I think it has a lot of merit and was a great experiment for this video. I don't have a bulletin board anymore, so I can't tell you how many pancakes I've eaten over the past week. I know that this is update 78. And I know that we are still at 86 of you watching me. Thank you, all of you. Pardon me. All of the totems are... Well, I'm planning on putting a video right here where you can see all the totems. There they are. The salt and pepper are not totems from anybody. I'm using those. Let's get this edited.